Okay, thanks everyone for coming. I know it's the end of the day, and it's even more the end of the day than when the day started. My name's Maria Scurry. I head up global communications for Celonis. And the way that the women's panel came about, I will tell a story. I was at what we call customer exchange workshops, very small workshops of our customers, could be 20 customers, and this one was in New York. I was new to the company, probably 3-4 months in. My first customer event, and every presenter was a woman. It was Merck, it was Lockheed, it was Mars. I'm trying to think of all of them. But it was a lot, and I came from the BI space. There's usually not a lot of women in tech, no big newsflash. And so I said, is there something about process that really attracts women? Is there some skill set in process? So I tested out this theory with a few customers, some who couldn't make it today, who said, I'll be on that panel if you do it, and then told me they couldn't make it. So, but that's what we're going to be talking about today, is what are those unique skill sets that it takes to get through your organization with not just the technology, but with the business value. And we have a great panel here today, a very diverse experience. We wanted newcomers, we wanted people with lots of history, with diverse experience here. And to do that, to start the panel, before I start with my questions, I'm going to have each person introduce themselves, give a little bit of your role now, and a little bit of your background even before you came to this job. I can start with you, Xiaowei.
So, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah?
I don't. Still me.
So my name is Xiaowei. I'm working for Airbus, within Airbus, and I'm the product owner of the process mining solution. I have, luckily have 5 people that we are working together for the process mining products. And I'm a very newcomer to Airbus, and I just finished my study. So it's been only 2 years that I'm in the professional work, and it's my honor to manage, to lead a process mining journey within Airbus.
My name is Olga. I'm coming from Russia. My background is in human resources, mostly in banking industry. Currently, I'm holding a job of business process director. I have a team of 4 people, and we're doing business transformation in telecommunications company, Tele2 Russia. I think, well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this panel. I think it's important to understand that the diverse issue, I don't think an issue anymore, right? We can speak about it, but however, in my team there's 2 girls and 1 man. So I guess we're going to see how we end up with the discussion, but thank you for inviting.
My name is Elham Ramazani. I'm managing the Center of Excellence for Process Mining in KPMG, where we support our clients globally and find different use cases based on process mining technology. I'm a PhD graduate in this discipline, yeah, and I came after PhD to KPMG.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Barbara Infante. I work for Becton Dickinson. We're a medical technology company. My background is finance, accounting, and my role today is largely a business process role. So much of my team is focused on business process improvement in the company, and then as a separate hat, I also own and manage the Celonis account for all the processes.
And my name is Maureen Fleming, and I'm a technology analyst and market researcher. So I figure out different types of technologies that make sense inside of an organization, in particular process-centric technologies. The first time I wrote about process mining was in 2007. And the first presentation I gave on the topic was 2008. So I'm really happy that, this market is taking off in such a great way. And before I worked for technology startups, I've raised venture money, I worked for large technology companies, and I started my career as a developer. And so I've had lots of different interactions with men, far fewer with women. So I'm glad that we're having this session.
Great, thanks. So I talked about why this session came about, so I'm going to start with a question along those lines for everyone, and then we've all had some good conversations before this panel, so I'm going to target certain questions after that. But for the first one, just talking about what are those skills needed in process, because I do a lot of interviews just in my job, customer interviews, and it isn't just tech skills, clearly. And with a new technology that not everybody clearly understands, there's a lot of having to bring it out to the market, like Siemens talks about doing a world tour, you know, and Kamoris couldn't be here today because that's what she was doing. So can you talk a little bit about, in your roles, what are the skill sets that are needed? Because I know you all have very different roles around this.
So within Airbus, I'm working for the IT, I'm in the IT services, so I have to propose the process mining solution to them. And so first of all, I need to show them what is process mining, what is Celonis, what Celonis can bring to help them to create business value and improve their process. And once they're convinced, so we are going to organize several workshops with them to build their data model, to provide the data, to get the data available, and to create analysis with them. So to get in the concrete to help them to have the improvement plan. So this is what my job is to work along with the business, tell them, okay, now you see the process, we build the data, we get the data available, now you can see the bottlenecks, you can see the pending points, so please look at the process and start to build something, and I'm here to support, to create KPIs, to build more advanced dashboards to help them to understand better their as-is process and to help them to build the 2B process, to really get in a process improvement journey. Yes.
Okay.
In my company, we're looking at transforming business processes in general. It's not only about technologies within the systems. It's also about changing minds, and I guess that's why the skill sets that we need is hard skills and soft skills. And hard skills will be definitely like using the Celonis, for example, or just the usual workflow analysis and these kind of things. For the soft skills, of course, communications is probably the most important that we need to have, and we are basically doing this every single day. And my personal job is to transform people's understanding as to why we need the change and what exactly has to be changed and why it's so important to do it now, what will be the outcome, and I guess the persistence and the let's say the consistency in what we do is very important as well.
Process mining is has an explorative nature. So you find something, you dig deeper, you find something, and then you dig deeper. This creates the situation sometimes that, especially if you're an engineer and a technical person, that you get amazed with all these possibilities. You try to get drowned in all the insights that you find. But what is I have learned during these years that what is really important is that to bring it back to the business question, to really re-evaluate every step of the analysis and listen to the business question, listen to the pain points of the business. And I think therefore, I think the art of listening is very important. And I don't have statistics at hand, but females are supposed to be better in listening, I believe. And I think that's one thing I noticed, that it's very important to have a mixed team, especially from female colleagues. Another thing I noticed is the data preparation part. Nothing kills a process mining or any data science project than lousy data preparation. So paying attention to the details is very important, and making it right, especially on the data preparation part, I think is very key. And in the team that I work with, I really see that sometimes female colleagues have the eye for seeing really detailed things, and it's really good. I think it's a valuable, I think, skill. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with everything that I've heard so far. And my team is small, but it's pretty diverse. I mean, there's some folks that are very good functionally, very good technically. Other people that just know people in the business, because that's a lot of this, is figuring out, okay, who do you call with this information? and just somebody who can be very sensitive, because people can get pretty defensive sometimes about the data until they understand it. So just a pretty diverse group of skill sets is really helpful.
So one of the things that I notice when I get involved with projects that involve process change or re-engineering is that as you start showing people how a process operates visually, and I've not used process mining tools in projects, it's more for planning, is that almost immediately people start talking about how their organization is really not structured properly for being able to be efficient. And so it seems like with a lot of my projects, there tends to be a stall somewhere in there as they think about how to do some kinds of reorganization. So being able to talk to the, what I do a lot of is I map technology to requirements, and then we start working on how the technology sort of is applied. And from that perspective, there's a lot of changes that have nothing to do with technology. So I support those points. And being able to really communicate well with the executives who are sponsoring the redesign and that sort of thing, that's a soft skill that becomes really important. And so in a way, it's not as important as making a good tech selection because that sort of doesn't take you into production well if you make the wrong decision. But being able to have everyone communicating really, really well together, built around evidence, is really very useful.
And I'm actually going to go back to you on this one then, because one of the things, we had some calls first, and one of the things that Maureen said that I loved, and I'm going to bring up, is, we were talking about what are the skill sets, the combination of skill sets, whether you're a man or a woman, but what are the ones that women are particularly good at? Because what you're seeing about people's backgrounds, and I find this with Celonis customers, but it was true in BI too, is some have a business background and then get trained on the tech, which you said was true for you.
Yeah.
And then others have a tech background. You went to school for computer science, and then they sort of learn the communication skills and the learning, or maybe they just have it. So there's this diverse skill set. But one of the things Maureen said, and you see a lot of companies, right? So being an analyst, you get an eye into how different companies work. And you said the thing is, it really depends on the culture. And I'm going to ask you to tell a little bit about the just do it versus the art of war. Art of war. That was my Boston accent, sorry.
So I think we were talking, I said before that I've looked at process mining and have written about it and have been, telling my clients to adopt it for over a decade, right? And the most common objection you come across is, we're just gonna do it, and then we can change if we don't do it right. And so to me, those were the Nike organizations, sort of the just do it teams, and those tend to be very dominated by dudes, right, and who want to work fast. And in a way, I'm not even being disrespectful of the attitude. What they want to do is show results rapidly to leave a good impression, so that they can do more. And and then leave and get a promotion when everything falls apart because they didn't do it correctly. And then there's other organizations that are also really interesting. Those are the ones, if you look at Art of War, you have to visualize how to win the battle in order to win the battle. Paraphrasing, and those organizations are they focus on how to do good planning so that they don't have to redo things. And we're seeing that same, and I don't think it's a gender thing. I think it's an orientation, but we're seeing that same thing play out still in technology. And right now it's playing out in robotic process automation, for example. I'm talking to customers who have exactly that same delineation. But I think that I think all of us are more on the planning is better side of it than on the just do it side of it.
Or you might be a planner inside a just do it company, and you have to balance that, right?
Well, you have to really start embracing the idea of agile mining concepts, right? So just do it a little at a time, or plan a little bit at a time. And do a little at a time.
And one of the things that we talked about in culture and as a backdrop is what are those sort of skills for advancement, right? And some of the just do it comes from, I'm going to get through this, and I know I can, and I'm going to have the confidence, and I'm going to, present this, and I'm going to advance. And we were talking about presentation skills. I know, Barbara, you talked about presentation skills. I was going to have you talk about that, and then I have something for you.
Sure. Skills for advancement, presentation skills. The big one, too, is political savvy. I mean, that nobody can tell you what the politics are in your company, but you should know. And if you don't know, then there's a whole game being played that you're not aware of, right? It took me a while to figure that out.
If I may add to the cultural differences and the facilitation of discussions.
Yeah.
I really like this example because I used to be in banking industry, which is high demand, very qualified people who are making decisions on big bucks in seconds, and telecommunications, people who are in deep knowledge of what they do. So the differences between the facilitation of discussions, for example, you're sitting at the table in banking, there are leaders around the table, and all of them are so sure that their answer is right and correct that you never come to a result because they are fighting between themselves. And that's a cultural thing. And you have to facilitate it in a way so you get the result. In telecommunications, there's a whole different story where people for a long, long time discussing very deeply, knowledgeably the subject, and never ever you have a leader around the table who is willing to say, we're going to do that.
The
Just have a very long discussion with no result at all because nobody's kind of have a clue, where we're going. We're just discussing this. So that's a cultural
None of
difference.
those sound very great. I gotta say.
No, that's about the facilitation of discussions, right? You still need to get into, at the end, you have to have a result.
Yeah.
So that's the way your set of competencies when you are facilitating discussion, and that's different.
Yeah.
Because the companies are different and people are different.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that kept coming up about that is, what are the skill sets you need? And then how do you foster them when you run teams? And what makes a great team? So there's a few elements to that. One of them is how do you bring those skills up? And we had talked about that, and I would love to have you talk about sort of an apologetic style.
Yes.
Look at her like, oh yeah. But there is a style that is very difficult when you're sort of selling, whether it's process mining or any other idea, even if you have great data and you've done all the work, or not being sure that you have the right data.
Yeah.
So could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I also noticed it in my team because I have also junior female colleagues and male colleagues, and I think some parts of it comes with experience, so they will, I think, learn it also in future. But I have the feeling that the female colleagues, they do really preparation when they want to go to give an answer. So they come and test every detail things, and then, but they are still not sure. And then when you ask them that, okay, why aren't you sure? Then why aren't you giving me a definite answer? Yeah, did you check this? Did you check that? And they have a list of all the things that they have checked about. But with the male colleagues, they come with a very good confidence. This is the answer. And whereas then I am the one who asked them, did you check this one? No, but I'm sure that this is the answer. They are so confident. And I think both of this is necessary because you need to do enough preparation before when you go out of your comfort zone, for example, to be sure and show this confidence. But then you need to be a bit more courageous and show it.
Yeah. And how do we, what came up in that? So you told that story and I said, what do you do? How do we as managers, mentors, teach that, model that behavior? And I think a really important point here, and we all said it, and I had it later in the piece, but I want to say it, is that a lot of us were able to model good behavior because we had great male bosses. Right? We had great male mentors too. I certainly, my whole career, have had only fabulous male mentors. I mean, I've had a really a great ride there. And I've also had great women mentors. And so how do we foster that with the person who comes, and you know how smart she is,
Yeah.
You know she triple-checked. You believe in those figures. You're ready to throw her in the deep end, but she's still tiptoeing to the edge, right? So I'm just going to put that out, and you all, I know, have different experiences here. You talked about executive female mentors, which
Yes.
I think is an important thing. Do you want to?
Yes, sure. I've been blessed in my life to know a great woman. It's Olga Dirgunova. She used to be, in 1995, the only woman in Microsoft being CEO around the world. And she's an extraordinary woman, for sure. What I've learned from her, first of all, and that's why in the beginning of discussion I told I don't think it's an issue anymore, and I never actually felt it's an issue between gender kind of discussion in general. There's a set of competencies, and again, this is soft and hard skills, and your soft skill is, of course, being assured in yourself, and there's methods, and we all know them as, for example, coaching, as with my HR background, I may tell you for sure that works. So you can develop this in yourself, but being sure in what you're saying, how you're saying, communicating to executives on the same level. Once you are sure in yourself, you basically don't have an issue of is it a man behind you or a woman. You're just solving the issue. Also, what I've learned from her is that no matter how high up you are, at what top level you are, you always respond to people, you respect people, and the open door policy usually is quite often when we're saying it's a policy and we're just saying blah blah words rather than doing exact things. Well, she never does that. Still, we're not working together right now. She responds to my emails not more than 2 hours, and she's at the very top of the second largest bank in Russia. I mean, how beautiful this is.
That's impressive.
And she's always responding in a deep way. She understands what I'm asking. Of course, I'm respecting her and I'm not asking dumb questions, but still, that's very impressive that she does that. My second mentor in life also, I've been blessed. He's based in London, and it's a he.
Yeah.
He, again, I guess the most interesting thing about what he brought into my career life is the way he communicates. He doesn't say the exact words, but it's like the whole new world opening to you. Simple 3 words just that makes you think, and as of a sudden, you did it by yourself. It's not he who gave you the result, that gave you the suggestion, but you know everything.
Yeah.
And it's a real blessing of being in touch with such people.
Yeah. And you talked about that. You're coming up in your career, so and that was part of us wanting to balance the panel and talk about like what's helpful to you. And you were, we were talking about diverse teams, and many, I think all of us, mostly all of us in this room, if you're in tech, have been the only before. And we all say, you don't even want to be only in a team. I've been in teams of all women, and that's not good either. I like diversity all the way around, right? Because I'm in marketing, so that happens. And then you get into technology or into executive teams, and then, all bets are off. You're on your own. But one of the things that you talked about is just how they sort of helped you to present yourself, and you didn't have to give somebody else the notes, and they present for you. And
So my current manager is my first real manager, and he just gave me a lot of trust. So he trusted me, and sometimes when I have doubts, I can always get to him and ask him questions, and he give me a vision and give me the freedom to make my decision and to improve in my daily work. And so that's what I'm doing with, so we are working in Xiaowei, so with our development team. So I'm the only girl in the team, so with, for 6 people, and I also trust them, and I'm the youngest, as we can say, so I have to ask a lot and to understand them, and sometimes to translate the business need with them. And I think the soft skill is the most important skill in our daily job, and also the trust, really to believe that they understood and will deliver something together, and to give them the freedom to do whatever we want and to keep smile and to have fun in the work.
That's good.
Yeah.
Having fun in the work makes the work better.
Yes.
Yes. So one of the things I want to talk about that we all were talking about in different ways, we talked about mentors, but we also talked about there's often, and I found this to be very culturally different. I've always worked for global companies, which I love because I love diversity, is in America especially, it's very common to have women's groups within companies. Not as common, I found, in other places. But I know, Barbara, you've been involved in a lot, and there's also a lot of women's groups in industry, not just in corporations. In BI, there were a lot. In business intelligence, there were a lot, I know. Very well established, certain people who were, would always get people together, not vendors, but just all together. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I uncovered something when I was interviewing for this, because I said, are there any process mining groups? And there is one, and we have a member.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yes.
And then, Barbara, I'd love you to talk about the women's
Sure.
groups that you're part of.
So there is a process mining girls group, actually, it's called. And they're mainly the graduates of the TU Eindhoven and different generations where is the birthplace for process mining. And we meet every now and then. And now all of this, they have left, they're mainly left academia. They are all in the industry. And they're having different roles, mainly on the delivery and technical roles. So we meet, discuss about the different things, the companies that we are working on, what kind of challenges we see, how can we basically encourage the girls, basically student girls, to not be afraid of tech and math and engineering and go for it. So yeah, these are the topics we discuss also in that gathering.
Yeah, that was good. So I learned something from this. She's like, oh, but there is one. I have to tell one other funny story because I said it to a few of you. Another cultural difference. So words really matter, especially, I'm a comms person. Words matter to me. And in the States, and I've had teams of women, we don't say girls. And we don't like to be called girls. And 3 people on this panel call themselves girls to me. And you said it. You said something, well, I'm an Asian girl. I was like, no, you're a person. You're a woman. And she's like, no, that's what I am. You were very funny. And 2 other people did it. So it's not, but we are very
That's
trained.
the name of the group, Process
I
Mining
understand,
Girls.
but we would not call it that in the U.S. That's what I meant by cultural changes. Because that's sort of like girls, So we wouldn't do that, but, we're Americans. We like to say, you can't do that to me.
So,
So
girls' power, is it British then?
I would say that with my daughter is in tech too.
Yeah.
So and she is in AI R&D, and so there are like 3 women for every 150 men or whatever, and she would never ever use the word girl to refer to herself, ever.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because I trained her as an American woman to never do that, but she's very conscious about a lot of bias that can happen if you act like a girl.
Yeah. And Maureen, you told, so Maureen has a great story because she's seen the difference when we talked about because you went to school for computer science.
Yeah.
And then your daughter did. So I learned something else. I'm going to share all my learnings here tonight, which I never actually expected, to be honest. You said there were a lot of women in computer science, or relatively a lot, when you started. And then it went down, and then it kind of went back up. But I didn't realize that there was a lot at a time. I always thought there was never a lot. Do you want to talk about that? Because I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty common. Just at the back in the mainframe and mini computer era, it was pretty common to work with other women who were also, we were called computer programmers, then not developers. So back then, and a lot of us were, math majors or something else, and then did programming because it made sense. So it was pretty common. Then it really dissipated quite a bit. And then with my daughter, when she was an undergrad comp sci, she was there were 5 women in a graduating class of 150. That was it. But when she went to grad school, it was 50-50 men and women. So it's just interesting to think about, that it's not. It seems like women in tech at that level are more maybe very ambitious. I don't know how to say it. Why you'd go from less than 5% of a graduating class to 50% in grad school. But I thought that was also interesting.
It is, because the numbers change, and they do change where you are. You talked about coming from HR. In marketing, there's a lot of women, but so much of my career have been the only woman. So I think all of us have had that. So just going back, because I said I would go to it, Barbara, it was you were saying you're part of.
Sure, yeah. So BD has associate resource groups. Does anybody here have ARGs? So we have like a women's group and an African American group and all these different groups. But back maybe 8 years ago, we were starting it up, and so I was part of the women's group and just trying to get it off the ground, the first ARG. And I had done a lot of research and understood kind of maybe some of the things that women, opportunities that women had that could be a little different than men. So I had a little of that under my belt. And as I was trying to call different sites to get them, sites within BD, to get them to start women's groups in that site, I had leaders of those groups saying, but why? Is there a business case? Why should I promote women? I'm like, are you serious? I mean, there's all these business cases about diversity leads to better business outcomes and all these things, but it wasn't that long ago that we were just having to prove that even internally. And since then, we've come a long way. There's a whole group that's inclusion and diversity now, and they're really on board, but it's come quite far, quite fast.
Right. And I think, too, and that's where I said it's culturally very different, is there is support in it, in having these kind of groups. There is support in a shared experience. And there is, we all want diverse groups to work in. We don't want to work in all women's groups. But the reason for it is the support of others. And people did give, we talked about what skill sets are needed, and it also came to how we need to support each other in those skill sets. How do we need to make each other better? And also, I would say, I'm going to go to one with, there's men in the room. How can men, make it better? Because there are men who make it better all the time. And we want more of them in the room sometimes. But there were 2 stories that were given, and I think they're really good stories that go back to why the women's group, actually. Because there are things that people don't see. By the way, I'm going to tell you one right now. There are things that people just don't see, and let me see if Southern is still here. Okay, so we were in a rehearsal last night for Main Stage, and the person working at this venue said, "Would you like a beer?" to Southern, and he said, "Would you like a beer?" to the other product guy there. And there were 2 women there, the women who demoed today and myself, and he didn't look at us or ask us. And I'm sure Southern did not notice that, because why would you notice if you just wouldn't notice, because you don't have to notice. I know that's little. It doesn't matter. It doesn't advance me in business. But what I'm saying is you don't know unless someone points it out. And so what I've always had, I've always worked with very enlightened men, maybe, that they want me to point it out. They want a better workplace. They want to know, how do I make our teams gel better so I have the right balance of skills. I want that person that, is heads down worker, but I want the person who is going to sell the heck out of this. And everyone in the room is going to listen. So one of the stories that was told, the seat at the table story, the very literal seat at the table story, I would love you to share, because I thought, I'm going to tell my son that story.
Yeah, so actually it's a Celonis related story as well, which is kind of fun. So I was at one of our businesses presenting Celonis. I was presenting some of the findings to the business president and his leadership team. There were 20 people in the room. Happened to be 2 women. So I came in. Of course, I noticed that straight away. So it's time for us to give our presentation, myself and my boss, who's man, and 2 people got up to give us their seat at the table. It was the 2 women. So just interesting note, I'm not sure anybody else around the room even noticed. I noticed. So my colleague was presenting right after me. So I'm sitting at the front of the table, and he's about to present, and I said, oh, well, let me offer my seat because, he's going to present. And I thought, oh my God, there's 19 other people that could offer their seat. Like, why is it that when people came in the room, it was literally only the women who offered their seat? I mean, if you want a seat at the table, it starts with actually being at the table.
Physically.
Right? Physically. So it was just very interesting, and I'm sure they were a great group of people. I didn't really know any of them, but it was just interesting because I don't think any of the rest of the people in that room even noticed that.
I want to make a comment.
I love when you want to make a comment.
Right.
Go.
To me, the worst thing you could do as a woman is get up from a seat at a table. So, because, and you notice men don't, in your example, men did not get up to, clear a seat so someone else could sit down. And so for women to do that, when you are at a table and then you take a back seat, you marginalized yourself by doing that. Because when you end up, communicating, the people at the table tend to have more of the communications. When you're sitting in back, if you look at some of the board meetings and other executive sessions that you're involved with, they'll have the people who are in the rows behind the main table who are in a junior position. So to me, this idea of taking a back seat for women might be polite, but it's not good.
Right.
So I would just say,
Don't
stay
be
at
polite.
the table.
I pulled myself
Don't be
back at the
polite.
table, yeah.
So
No, but it is an odd particular, it's just a very at the moment natural thing. And I think that's why it was a great example.
Yeah.
It's something we see every day. You guys probably never thought about it, or some of us have. Or the beers, you never thought about it, but
being in tech startups, raising venture money, being discriminated against because I'm the only woman in the room, I'm very conscious of
yeah,
these things.
that's why I said I
So-
love when you want to make a point. I love it because it's a lot of lessons learned over the years that others can learn from, and that's what it's really all about. And that's actually what today's about. And it's also about how to sort of structure great teams, structure the right skills. Don't be less than. It's one of the big themes that we talked about. And it's not the one on this panel. It's a lot about the people we work with and how we pull each other up. And I think that's the great thing. The reason for doing this panel, because I know we're going to be wrapping up, but the reason for doing it was this. It was really just an idea to start the conversation. You see each other at dinner later. You tap each other and say, hey, we should talk, and keep the networking going well after our time here. And I would say that to add to the questions, and I am going to wrap up, so I just wanted to say I'm not going to just stay with the script because it's late in the day. Let's get off script. Any other comments to close that any of you want to share? You have something I see?
Yeah,
I like it. Lean forward.
I was reading a report which was published by the Data Science Center, European Data Science Center, and it was telling that 80% of the jobs at the 2030 are not invented yet. And they will be mainly around tech and engineering, basically. And what I'm thinking is that it would be really a pity if we don't encourage our students, girl students, female students, to basically get them interested in this topic, because then we will miss the whole lot of this potential. And I think we have now leaders of many companies here, and I think everyone should do its own bit of work to really bring that message and bring it to the very young age. I think that's where they start. Boys normally start coding at the age of 8 or 7, whereas then we expose our children or our girls mainly by the dolls. So it's really, then when they come to the level that they need to choose, they feel that they're not on the same level, then they are already ahead, the males are already ahead of them. And I think it's very important to start it from the very young age, and it's a very important and serious topic. It's not just a nice thing, it's, I think, a very important thing.
It's how business will advance.
Yeah.
Very, very literally. And I also think that one of the things when we talk about STEM and we talk about getting girls, and then I do mean girls, and then women as part of this, it comes back to the same thing we started with, which is we need the diverse skill set. And if they think science and math isn't for me, they don't realize you need science and math, but you also need those communication skills. You need to listen.
Yeah.
You need the soft skills, right? And so if we sort of bring the whole package, and you're not just a heads down coder, which might be what scares people, right? I think that will do a lot. But you're right, we all have to have a voice in it, right?
I think, so based on my experience, I have a management diploma, a master's degree, and I think everything is possible because today I'm scripting, I'm coding, and I'm building data science, data analysis around process mining topics. So if we want to, that we can have a lot of possibilities.
Yeah. And that was an interesting thing. Went to school for business, but does all the technical skills on the job, learned on the job, which is a flip of often how it works, where you have to get the business skills after the tech skills. So that's an excellent example. Well, I'm going to wrap up because it's the end, and I think that was a good ending. And so I thank you all for joining me. I thank you all for joining me at the end of the day, and talk to each other and network with each other and let this be the start. And maybe next year at Celosphere, somebody will raise their hand and say, I want to run that group. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.